Hey, what's up?
What's going on, man?
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Hey, good evening.
Hey,
Good
I'm good,
evening.
Kato.
I just realized I muted. I said good evening, everybody.
Oh, how you doing, Dr. Cato?
I'm doing all right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I need that sweater in my life, man.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew somebody was going to
Yeah,
say that.
okay.
I don't get to wear it very often.
Oh yes,
Dr.
I
I see
King,
love
you.
that.
I
I see
can't
you.
really
I
fit it.
see you.
But Dr.
That
King
is
is
nice.
down there.
Yeah, well, go ahead and send me a link, all right? So I can give me one.
I got you. I got you.
Okay. Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Am-
Doing
So
well.
listen, we're good. So listen, we're today we decided to do a little impromptu show talking about giving our thoughts on the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King and his impact. Um, uh, some of the perceptions, misperceptions, and things of that nature in reference to his legacy. And I'm honored to have some gentlemen here. We are honored, excuse me, to have some gentlemen here that I respect a whole lot. Um, they are part of the bald headed, no follicle crew. As we see, welcome to the club. We are members.
Hey, look, I'm bald
So,
headed by choice.
Mm.
okay, that's what you want to say. Okay, I got you. So, have here Mr. Patrick Williams, a gentleman I respect very much. Historian in his own right. He's a native of Duplin County. I've been acquainted with him for a number of years now. We gotta guard ourselves on the telephone because if we ain't careful, we'll be up there for 2 hours.
Yeah.
But he's a history teacher at the Duplin Early College High School. Like I say, history teacher. Um, he is also town commissioner for the town of Teaching.
Oh, okay.
So not only is he a educator, he is also actively engaged in the political process and brings a lot of insight uh, to every thing endeavor he goes on to. So, Mr. Patrick Williams, glad to have you, bro.
Yeah, glad to have
And
you.
you can give Dr. Cato his honors, even though he's a Newburn boy. But go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Kato, he was with us before. Yeah, we thought it'd be a good idea to to bring him on and also see what kind of like what his thoughts are on MLK Jr., what his legacy was, and this kind of like my brother said, what we're going to talk about today. Um, so I'm going to defer this to my brother since he's older. I'll let you go ahead and get this thing started.
Look older, man. Look, but what? A year? Okay.
Hey,
Well,
slow down,
okay.
man. Hey, look,
Okay.
look, we're Southern
Okay.
Jews, man. So we gotta adhere to our our customs.
Yeah. All right. I show my grade, but that's all right. That's all right. Listen. So yes. So Martha King. Listen. What I'm gonna do is everybody just give a brief uh, introduction of your view or your way of dealing with King, how you came to know him, your different interpretations over the years and things of that nature, and how you think his legacy is relevant to today. First, I'll start with myself. As far as Dr. King, a lot of us normally, when we came in contact with Dr. King, was through the school system, right? Uh, we learned he had a dream in 1963, and that's it, right? And
Pretty
that's
much.
and that's the image that has been gift wrapped and given to us, and that's the image I had. And what I did is when I went to I attended a HBCU, and one thing about anybody who attends a HBCU, I think we have some HBCU graduates up here on this thing is once you get to HBCU, there's something about that truth that just hits you in the face. And I went through the stage, of course, as everybody. Malcolm X versus Martin Luther King and things of that nature. But once I began to study King and see his message, um, I began to understand, like, comparing King to I have a dream speech is like comparing the Cape Fear River to the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
And so I've spent the last 30 or so years drinking out the ocean, getting the other part of it. So hopefully during this dialogue, we'll get a chance to get into some of those things. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I guess I'll go. I'll say, hey, Junior, you took some of my thunder, man, because when I, other than what I learned in the little that I learned in high school, in middle school, high school, I started learning about Martin Luther King when I was reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, and like I say, that was one of the first books that my brother advised me to read once he went to Shaw University. And I was of the opinion that, man, I can't roll with Martin Luther King, man. I mean, that's just how it is. I was like, somebody hit me in the face. I mean, somebody spit on me. I mean, I just don't have I didn't have the temperament to be able to not want to go to blows. But again, once I really got into, like my brother said, start studying Martin Luther King and understanding, kind of, during his formative years, kind of where he gained his influences. A lot of it, he gained his influence from Gandhi and the movement that they did in India. And I started to understand that actually it takes more discipline, to be able to to be able to react nonviolently. I mean, it takes a little more, because anybody can just blow off steam, but I think to be able to maintain control, to be able to not bust out in the outbursts, and to be able to maintain composure, especially what some of our ancestors were going through. I definitely have more respect for Dr. King, especially the more that I learn about him.
Yeah,
Um,
to kind of piggyback on what you gentlemen were saying, I think I'm on some kind of delay. I might have to log out and log back in shortly, but um, the like James was saying, you learn in school back in the day, it was just there was slavery, then there was Martin Luther King, then everything was fine, and now we're all equal. And it's like there's got to be more to this story than just that. And so, you have a lot of respect for Dr. King. And then as you get older, you start to dig for yourself. You go to a HBCU or what have you, and you know there's some anger that actually started to arise. Like, why weren't we told this? Like, why weren't we told the whole story? How Dr. King had turned to looking at income inequality and started to have a little bit more outspoken nature about himself shortly before he passed or was murdered.
mhm.
Um, and so, over the years, those are the things that kind of everybody likes to echo his speeches. Conservatives, liberals, moderates, everybody has something to say. They want to invoke his spirit, but it's like, are we really doing the work? This we're still facing the same issues today. A lot of them that he was facing back then, um, and we've got a lot of work to do still.
Um, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can
Oh
hear you.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
we're
okay.
good, good, good.
Um, I guess I feel very fortunate and blessed. My mother first exposed me to Dr. Martin Luther King, and I was instantly fascinated with him, and I've been a student of his life more or less all my life. Um, I guess the most profound thing I can say, what has always struck me the most regarding Dr. King, was his profound intellect, um,
Yes.
as a scholar,
Hmm.
and as Mr. Smith just said, the strength to maintain discipline in terms of his nonviolent approach to civil rights. A very strong man. And I too went through that Malcolm X phase where some would say I'm still in it. But
yeah,
um, in terms of Dr. King and Malcolm X, I'm sure all you gentlemen will agree that they were far far more similar than they were different, and
Yes,
they were definitely on the
yes.
path to converging when they were both, tragically
Yeah.
struck down. So I feel honored anytime I get the chance to speak regarding Dr. King and his legacy. So yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Look, man, there are some things that I heard that kind of that still resonates with me. Now, I think Dr. Cato, you mentioned about how liberals and conservatives, everybody wants to invoke his name and everything, his quotes. And the thing is, and the thing that irritates me, and I'm getting more, I'm calling it out more now. I always have, but especially now, is that people have a tendency to evoke the part of King that makes them feel safe. That the part that doesn't cause them to do a self analysis. The part that makes them feel safe and secure in their low key racism, low key bigotry, or what have you. You know, because if you look, and like I said, if you analyze the "I Have a Dream" speech, uh, he not only said "I have a dream," if you really analyze it, he talked about the same things we're dealing with today. He talked about income inequality, right? He talked about police brutality, right?
Right.
He talked about voting rights. And some 50 years later, we're still talking about the same things. So that's the part. And also and I know we're going to probably get in this a whole lot, all of us, um, towards the end of his life. Oh my goodness. If anybody listened to the speeches he gave towards the end of his life, that was, yeah, when you said that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, that divergent path,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm talking about. And I got a few shots to take today, and hopefully I'll take them. I might not be invited back to the cookout, but I'm about 50 years old, man. I ain't taking this stuff to the grave with me. I got some stuff to get off my chest,
yeah.
so I hold on to it.
Hey, there's some feedbacks. I don't know if somebody has their
Uh,
they may have to mute it. There's some feedback.
get some feedback. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's see. I'm
Okay.
muted. Let's see.
you
Okay.
look like you was about to get into it, Doctor Cato.
No, I was just going to comment. One of my earliest remembrances of being exposed to Dr. King also was old folks' houses that had the pictures. They had the picture of MLK and JFK side by side. Like when you're young, you don't
Yeah.
understand who are these people. And so my
Yeah.
grandparent, my older aunts and uncles, they had these pictures, and so you would hear stories from them as well. But talking about invoking the spirit, I was reading today like these CRT people. The CRT people are invoking his spirit, and he would be so against it. And then the anti-CRT, the people who know what CRT really is and that is not really in our schools, they're invoking his spirit, saying that he would be in favor of, what they're trying to do to kind of correct, teach a more appropriate version of history in public schools. So it's like it just kind of divides his legacy for some of the younger generations that don't really know, from whence we've come in public school. So it's like,
That's definitely true. I was and I'm a piggyback on what my brother said about how people are. Yeah, he said more than 35 words. I mean, but I think also what matters is um, it's kind of like you have to set the scene. What was going on during the time period where he actually said some of those quotes? I mean, because I think that matters, and I think probably one of the most profound um, of his writing is the letter from Birmingham jail. That
Oh
was
yes,
that was
definitely.
probably. I mean, I normally read it a few times a year, but I think I read it this year, and every time I read it, as I mature, I start to take different things away from it. And so, when I was reflecting today, you know, he was in Montgomery, Alabama. Um, he was in jail, dealing with Bull Connor, dealing with what's the Governor Wallace, dealing with them. He was trying to organize boycotts to or peaceful protests so that public accommodations can come to the African American community there. And I just imagine, but also behind the scenes of his organization, he was also worried about money, about having enough money to bail out all the folks that he convinced to take part in these demonstrations because they were in jail for a long time. And so, so I'm thinking today, just imagining him in that jail. And by the way, he said he's been in a lot of jails, but he said the one in Montgomery was probably like one of the worst jails that he's ever been in. But but my point is that um, eight of the local white ministers of all denominations, they wrote a letter in the they didn't wrote a letter, they had an article. They kind of told him that they called him an extremist extremist. They said that the march wasn't I guess what he was doing, it was kind of untimely. And I'm just trying to think, like, he's in jail by himself, think all the things he has going on, but still he had the humility when he started off with his letter from Birmingham. Because look, we get emails and we ready to fire it off. You know what I'm saying? Emails that we don't
Yeah.
like, but and I'm not trying to compare that, but just to bring context. Everything that he's doing, all the external things that he's dealing with the organization, his wife just had a kid, so all those things are happening. But still, when he started off that letter with humility. Um, he didn't go in on them. He disarmed them from the beginning. And I think I looked at that and I was like, wow, could I have in that moment, could I have disarmed them? And he even said that, I think your criticism is coming from a good place. I mean, he started off with that. I don't know if I could have did it. And I was just thinking today, I was like, wow. He not only did he live it in in the public, but even the way that he dealt with the other people in terms of his humility, and also he didn't choose violence. Let's put it that way.
It's
What he
just
did, and he rhetorically set him up for the slaughter. That's what he did.
Yeah.
it's,
Oh, he
it's
did.
just like the patience and the eloquence of the letter from the Birmingham jail. It just highlighted just the high level of intellect, such a great mind that Dr. King possessed. And it brings me to the point, the sacrifice that he made, because he could have chosen to not even got involved in the civil rights movement and set aside and just made money for him and became wealthy. But he sacrificed, or he ultimately paid the ultimate sacrifice in his life. And what you alluded to earlier, James, regarding how they always invoke his name, especially every Black History Month when um, the how do I want to phrase this? The other folk, I say, when they want to feel good about themselves and they bring his name up about Dr. King, he was champion for peace and all that stuff. I like it's to the point where, okay, yeah, you took his life, um, you assassinated him. He was universally despised and hated while he was on earth, and now you trot him out in some form of cloak and dagger act to this is a good man. He fought for peace. He wasn't like the rest of you rebel rousers. He loved everybody. It's kind of like a long con game that they trot out every year, and it's quite sickening, actually. Yeah.
Listen. One thing we have to people forget. They try to historically make us forget is that at the time that Dr. King was assassinated, um, his popularity level was at an all-time low in the white and black community at that time. And even at the time when his popularity was high, uh, there were some churches that would not invite him into their pulpits, right? Some of those same black churches that are celebrating them now, some in Duplin County, some in Craven County, whatever, Dr. King would not be invited in their pulpit because a lot of times that they were more concerned about their status or how they were being viewed uh, in the status quo power structure than about bringing change to the masses. And we can delve in there a little longer for you if we dare.
It was like he was almost considered like a domestic terrorist, if you will. He was
Yes.
his favorability numbers stayed low in the 30 and the 40% from
Yeah.
1955 right until his
Yeah.
assassination in '68. Especially when he started speaking out against the Vietnam War and things like that. So yeah, I totally agree.
Like the power structure or whoever the moderates that he warned against, they embraced his ideology and they embraced his image once he was assassinated because it was an easier road for them than to have to face the other side of the pendulum, if you will, of a more radical, more a more swift move toward some of the changes that people wanted to see, so they could jump on that bandwagon and ride that, into where we are today. With we're still having that same debate about, are we moving too fast? We just need to slow down, get what you can get. I mean, the voting rights. If you read the voting rights legislation that is ahead of the Congress right now, it's a lot of stuff in there that I don't believe, a lot of people would not support, on the other side of the aisle, but they're pushing forward with it because, we have this battle right now, politically, between, moderates and progressives, and, do you want to move too fast? I just often wonder where Dr. King would sit in that argument. Would he be in favor of pushing as hard as you could to get whatever you could, or would he be in favor of get what you can and live to fight another day, and you go on and you move a little bit further along the next time around, that you get into sort of a legislative debate? I often wonder about those sorts of things. Um, we don't have leaders like Dr. King anymore that are able to coalesce people around a common cause. It seems like you're either on or you're off. Either you're red or you're blue, you're hot or you're cold. There's no in between, which can be problematic in a democracy.
Uh, Excellent point. I think Dr. King, I think he in the Out of Dream speech, he said something about the fierce urgency of now.
Right.
So he would have been probably trying to push for it immediately, because you got to understand at the look, I'm talking about the part of the Out of Dream speech that nobody will talk about, right? So he was talking about how he made those connections between the Bible and the founding documents. How the government supposedly wrote a check, in that check, and the all men are created equal, wrote a check about the United States Constitution, about all these rights that we have, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. And so he says, yeah, just be true to what you said on paper. That's what he said. And he said it's coming back bankrupt. So here we are. Now, this is 1963, 102 years after the end of the Civil War. Here we are, 50 some years, 60 years after his assassination, and we're still talking about the same things. So that's definitely bears some examination. And like I said, there's never been a willingness to fully. Nobody really wanted equality. You know, I think that was a catchphrase, and I think Dr. Cater, you alluded to the main issue, which really I think was really what clearly led to his assassination. Personally, was his twist towards economic freedom, economic equality or equity, not equality but equity. Because he said, look, what happened is, look, now we have integrated facilities, we have integrated hotels and integrated restaurants, right? But what good is an integrated restaurant and hotel, right? if people don't have a job to afford to attend those things. And that's something that needs to be examined because what he realized, and I think that ties into the Vietnam War, and I'll let somebody jump on that, is that yes, for that, those middle class, educated, Morehouse, Spelman, uh, elite Afro Americans, yes, for that group of people, of course, they could benefit from those things as far as integration and things, the opportunities. But for the masses, that was the issue. And towards the end of his life, that's why he started Harlem. But I'll digress. I'll fall back before I get too
Yeah,
too
but
wordy.
yeah, but also you look at the influence of what was happening in the world, not just domestically. You look at what was
Yeah.
I talked about India earlier, and then even countries in Africa that were ending colonialism. So he's saying, look at what's happening from an international level, and we're still just trying to get a cup of coffee, at a counter. I mean, so definitely what his travels overseas, particularly even when he traveled throughout Europe, Sweden, all those places, and he realized even during that time period, if you look it up, Sweden, Norway, they were still taking care of their citizens
Yeah,
with free health care, and I mean, so when he looks at their international, they definitely had gave him an even more sense of urgency. Same thing with Malcolm X. I don't want to talk about Malcolm X, but that's where those two start to converge. So go ahead, go
you
ahead.
got to.
I'm gonna
It's
stop.
hard. It's hard to talk about one without the other.
Yeah,
But
That's right.
yeah,
they were definitely on a converging path. And like you said, I think I'm a little rusty on his speeches. I think in '67, exactly a year before he died, when he gave Beyond Vietnam, and that's when he
Oh,
first
April
mentioned the
4th. April
the
4th. So you're
poor,
right.
yeah,
67. Yeah.
he mentioned the Poor People's March. That was kind of like the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. He started talking about economics, and he started criticizing how they were sending poor black boys off to die in Vietnam.
Yep.
That was a linchpin for it. Yeah.
That speech, a radical redistribution of wealth is needed.
yeah,
I think that's where his death warrant was signed at because he was talking about not only African Americans, he was
yeah,
talking about
everybody.
everybody.
Yeah,
Because when you start talking about poverty, this thing about race becomes very insignificant because when you talk about poverty and the people and the way people were living at that time, yeah, sending all those streams. He broke it down in that speech. I'm glad you brought that up, Pat. He broke it down in that speech. He talked about compared how much you send, how much it costs to send somebody to Vietnam versus how much it costs to feed a family, things of that nature, and how Lyndon Johnson pulled all that money from these social programs that was supposed to raise up poverty, raise people out of poverty, and send it to Vietnam and send these poor black boys off to die in a country they weren't realizing their rights. So yeah, those are things that have to be examined, and those are the things that as you say today, the party king that people don't want to talk about.
Like you said, I can't think of the name. Johnson had a policy. I can't. I'm drawing a blank right now. But he basically called him out on it. And he made it a class struggle. Johnson had some policy. I cannot think the name of it right now.
Is
Some
it guns and
program.
butter?
Mhm.
Oh no, the Great Society. Great
The
Society.
Great Society. The Great Society.
Yeah,
And that was supposed to
yeah.
be all inclusive. And he pretty much called him out on it. And that, like you said, that he signed his death certificate right then and there, I believe. He
but the thing
started
about
talking about
Johnson is
economics.
you have to realize that it was a Johnson was he realized that he needed the southern bloc, the southern vote, so he wasn't going to push the voting rights legislation
Mhm.
but before then because he realized he was going to lose all that support for the Great Society.
Yeah.
Johnson
Uh,
was definitely an astute politician.
Yeah.
oh, let me tell you something. I can't remember the name of the book, but it talked about the Voting Rights Act. Um, I gained a new respect for Lyndon Johnson. The way he masterfully got that legislation through, the arm twisting. Another thing about it, he was a Southern racist segregation, so he could speak their language, right? Um, the thing about it is pushing the voting rights and civil rights legislation. And I think Aunt, you bought into it about the international thing, about the part that escapes us, is that Lyndon Johnson was not an ally. He was acting in his interest, right?
He's an
And
opportunist.
his international, thank you, sir, international, international geopolitical interest. It looked bad on the international stage for the United States to be in a Cold War, fighting all these countries, trying to stop Russia, calling out the communists, calling out them at the United Nations. When you have African Americans being shot and babies being blown up in churches, it was just a bad look. Bloody Sunday was not just national, it was international. And
If
so
correct
that's
me if
what we
I'm
have to
wrong,
keep in
James.
contact.
I'm sorry.
Say it
Correct
again?
me if I'm wrong, James, but didn't Malcolm X mention that in Battle of the Bullet? How
Yeah,
Donald
yes,
Trump
he
was
did.
a
It,
hypocrite on the world stage. So what?
yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Look, don't, but look, man. You know, Gunswell don't bring up the Battle of the Bullet, man, because
Woo!
I look, tell you about the Battle of the Bullet. Maybe once a month that plays in our car. So I'm just gonna tell you. I gotta remember. But that being said, I think we need to understand the difference between someone being an ally and just sharing common interest,
Yeah.
right? And granted, it was in our interest in the way Johnson did that with not only the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, but don't forget the Fair Housing Act. Those pieces of legislation that was pushed through because of the assassination of King. I think, right? Um, that yeah, he was definitely not an ally, but it was in our interest because it was in his bigger agenda. Uh, but yeah, that is man, wow. I gotta fall back a little bit because I get to
Yep.
man bring the battle of bullet. That ain't right, Pat. That ain't right, man.
But I'm also just I'm drawing a parallel now. Civil Rights Act was when was the election? He took over Kennedy's term, and then the
Yeah,
election was it in '64?
yes.
Was it before or
Against
after he? Was it before or after the Civil Rights Act was passed?
before
Okay.
he finished out Kennedy's term, and I think he was reelected. So I think that legislation that Kennedy was working on,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, was finished in the Johnson administration.
And then so now that I got the dates right, what did we when he passed the Civil Rights Act? Uh, Barry Goldwater, right?
There you go.
Hmm.
And it's funny how and this is the you parallel Barry Goldwater, right? After the Civil Rights Act was passed, and
Uh
then now you
oh.
look at President Obama, and then you look how we had Trump, and you when you look at what Barry Goldwater was running on, it's nothing new under the sun. I mean, you
That's
can
right.
you can interchange Barry Goldwater and his message with Donald Trump's message.
Yeah. Look, man. I think we're beginning to draw those parallels. I think that when you start talking about that, you're going to start talking about what happened when all those Southern segregationists and all those Southern races in the South, those Dixiecrats, all
Dixiecrats. Yeah.
those Dixiecrats, yep, all they fled the Democratic Party and went to the Republican Party.
Yeah.
So that definitely comes into play when you bring that up.
One of the things that I was watching this documentary on Dr. King. They were talking about how good he became at using the media to his advantage, and how all of these things were happening in the South, and like the rest of the world was either unaware or turned a blind eye, or they just didn't know the extent to which it was happening. Um, and so the media became a target, similar to what has happened in the last 4.5, 5 years or so. The media has become a target when they highlight certain things. um, Martin Luther King's son was giving a speech today, as a matter of fact, about voting rights, and he was saying that there was lots of things that they were pushing for over the course of some years that didn't happen until, this is not related to voting rights necessarily, until George Floyd and and some of the other recent events have happened, that he said that you never know what's going to be the impetus behind a law being passed, but you can't stop pushing forward, whether you think anybody's listening to you or not. You can't stop pushing forward because you never know when that spark will come that's going to inspire some kind of legislation and get people to get on board. I know what he was talking about. He was talking about the Confederate flag on the Mississippi state
Mm-hmm.
flag, and then South Carolina in particular, and that it didn't until those people were killed. You know, that was the spark that kind of led to them pulling that down off the flag. Um, and so, to my point about the media, being able to use the media to your advantage to get a word out and to get people to see this is not just made up, like this is really happening. These are real people. These are our citizens. These are people. And it's a shame that you have to go to that route, that people just don't do the right thing all the time. But that he was a master at using the media to his advantage to get the word out about what was actually happening in the South to children and to other people who were just exercising their rights.
Yeah. And
Look,
just
Dr. Cato.
one quick thought. Let me put this in there before I
Okay.
forget about it.
Okay.
One other thing that's really important was how much admiration that he had for his wife. He let it be known that he can do that. That his wife was one of his, obviously one of his staunch supporters. But when you look at a lot of his speeches, a lot of his, even a lot of his private thoughts, she was definitely the driving force behind giving him the confidence to continue to push forward. But I just want to throw that in there. A good woman makes a
Oh
difference,
yeah.
boy.
Oh yeah. Well, look, we can attest to that. Uh, but what Dr. Cato said about the media savageness, and what I said and what he did back then, how what happens back then draws parallels to today. Um, Everybody's talking about like with the Black Lives Matter movement. See, back then Black Lives didn't matter, and it was a strategy to have those white students come down south. And see, the thing is, it's funny how the world reacts differently when it's the when it was the white kids getting killed and beat up, and it was the wealthy people, their children. I call them people allies because they took blows and
Hmm.
they some of them got killed. So that's an
Yeah,
ally, right?
Yeah.
was it Goodman and Sherner? Sherner?
Yes, right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Look, if that was Cheney who disappeared, we would have never heard about that.
Yeah.
The FBI would have went down there, right? It was good, and that's the issue is that when it was, he understood that when if it was just us getting killed, moderates, liberals, nobody cared because guess what? There were moderates and liberals during the lynching, during Emmett Till. Moderates and liberals have always been there,
Hmm.
but when they could put their face on the suffering,
Yeah.
then that's when the money and stuff start pouring in. So we can't lose that. We can't lose that.
Trying to think what else we got. um, I just had a thought.
I mean, I didn't have you wrapped up, did you, man?
No, I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh, you're talking
Well,
about
that's
moderates. He talked
yeah.
about he talked about the white moderate in his the letter from Birmingham. He said that, and you look at it, there, and it is true. There are some people who are more concerned with order than justice. If you look at two of the senators right now who are moderate senators in the Democratic Party who are holding up the Voting Right Act because they don't want to carve out the filibuster, even though they carved out the filibuster to just pass the debt ceiling. But now they're more concerned with order rather than voting right. So it's the same thing is repeating itself over.
Yeah, matter of fact, I found a quote. Actually, Dr. Ed Bell, he put this quote on his page just from the letter of a Birmingham jail, and these are Dr. King's exact words. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's greatest stumbling block in his stride towards freedom is not the white citizens counselor or the Ku Klux Klan, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than justice. That's a letter from Birmingham jail in 1963.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so definitely he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
It's like the ones who how they said uh, I'm down for black causes, but I don't want black neighbors.
Yeah.
You know that kind of thing. You know,
Well,
you're not already all the way dialed in.
yeah, and that's the he also drew the contrast between explicit. Hold on, let me make sure I get it right. About what we knew what was happening in the South, but also he talked about what was happening in the North. And so I'm trying to think: what's the difference between implicit or explicit racism? When I mean it's in your face, but in the North, crowding all we can talk about redlining. It all comes together, man. It all comes together. But he
I,
did make that
Talking
comparison
about
between the
de
difference between
facto
what
and de
happens
jure.
in the North and the South.
yeah, I
You
think
talking
what's
about
that?
de facto and de jure.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go. There you go. Look. I was about to look. I was about to go to
Chicago.
the history teacher. We talked about that. We in the reconstruction. We talked about de facto and de jure. One is by custom and tradition. One is by law.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And but what King said when they went eyes on the prize. If anybody had the eyes on the prize collection,
Mm-hmm.
please. Wow. If you got
Yeah.
those episodes, man, do yourself a favor,
It's
okay?
on Prime. It's on
But
Prime Video. It's on Prime.
it's on Prime Video.
Amazon Prime.
Oh
Yeah.
man, man, I'm telling you.
It
So
is. It is awesome.
he, yeah, he said when they went to Chicago, he said the racism in Chicago when they went to Cicero and places like that, he said it's nothing. The South is not even in comparison, right?
He said the racists in
So
Chicago could go to Mississippi and teach them how to hate.
teach them
Yeah,
how to hate.
he said they could get a
Yeah,
lesson.
yeah. So it goes. It goes to what our brother Malcolm X said about the South in the Battle of the Bullet. He said stop talking about the South. He said long as you below the Canadian border, you South.
Yeah.
So
You
so
can't,
basically, he
you can't,
said don't.
you can't escape it, James. You can't escape it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So stop trying to make these distinctions between racism in the North and
Mm-hmm.
South. Down south, you had the Klan. Up north, you had these police departments.
Yeah.
So same thing.
And legislators.
The legislators, yeah.
Just think about it, guys. Like from 1955 to 1968, how he was constantly. I mean, it was like a never-ending battle. From city to city, from state to state, getting death threats and all acts of violence enforced upon you. And I mean, being away from your family, eating in segregated bathrooms. I mean, eating in segregated kitchens and going to segregated bathrooms on the road, eating Vienna sausages and having being stuff from house to house to house, and with hardly any money.
Yeah.
He didn't make any money, so it's just he just he sacrificed so much
Yeah.
for us, and so
Um, Look, one thing I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up, and I'm surprised that I didn't bring it up earlier. Um, we need to forget. We forget, and I think when I say this, I'm gonna see a bunch of head nods. Not only was he, and I think you already know I'm going with this. Not only was he dealing with the death threats, dealing with the racists, dealing
FBI.
with those forces. I'm going.
Yeah.
He was also dealing with the federal government, with the FBI,
Yeah.
who is hell bent on. People forget about the look. I tell anybody,
Jagger.
COINTELPRO,
I
Co
agree.
anybody look COINTELPRO. Please look at that. Those definition has been released about how the aim of the COINTELPRO was to prevent. Now, this is a government agency our taxpayer dollars go to. Was to prevent the rise of a black messiah that could unite the black masses. So any black male or black figure that was charismatic, that could unite people around a goal or something, the goal of this agency was to discredit and sometimes murder them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Fred Hampton,
Fred,
Medgar
Fred, Fred
Evers.
Hampton, Mega Evans, yes, exactly.
Yep.
So keeping this is the same FBI that tried to convince and listen with Dr. King as part of the legacy. With the legacy, there's let's not be Pollyannish with it.
Hey man, he
The
was on the road,
FBI.
man. Look, he was on the road all
Yeah,
the time, man. You know,
and not
look, man, he was on the
bruh,
road,
nah,
man. I mean, I'm joking, man. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a
I
joke.
know, I
I'm
know.
joking.
Oh boy,
I'm joking.
I
Hey,
know.
look,
Well,
and Jerry, I'm joking. No,
I know. I was about to pause so you can be all right there. But yeah, so yeah, they what they tried to do is they tried to record him and send that to his wife to convince him to stop what he's doing and try to discredit him and things of that nature. Um,
Hoover told him to
but
commit suicide.
yeah,
he'd been told to commit suicide,
Yeah,
yes. And
suicide.
so we
Crazy.
can't lose sight of the fact that the government not only hounded King but hounded all those black leaders uh, and try to discredit them and ruin their lives and things of that nature. So to take in consideration all of those forces and still for him to maintain his core values, it speaks to an extraordinary person that he was. Because if he would have went the other way and told people to go the other way, they would have went.
yeah.
So yeah,
But
so that's
he talked
something that
about
we
that.
definitely
He
need to
talked
keep in
about that
mind.
a lot though, and he said because he did understand that the Nation of Islam was there, the Black Panthers were there, and so he was also because like I say, everybody does not have the composure to be able to get hit and still not react in a nonviolent manner.
Well, what
So
thing
it was
about
kind of like a
nonviolence?
warning.
But the thing about nonviolence, man, and I heard a speech he gave or something I read. Um, it was nonviolence was sometimes I don't know if it was a philosophy or a strategy. Um, Probably both, right? And the thing is that when you have the Black Panther influence and the Malcolm X influence, um, they were basically saying even Malcolm X said, he was nonviolent until you hit me in the face,
Yeah.
right? And so, which is a human response. But see, people who are viewed as subhuman are expected to be nonviolent and to take it. And I think that's why that where that those parallels come in, because you got to stand up north where there are more black people in the communities and there was more like a sense of togetherness and there wasn't that fear per se that they had in the south where somebody can just snatch you out at night
Yeah.
and kill you for no reason. I think that does kind of have a lot to do with how you internalize and how you
Yeah.
view things and things of that nature. Um, but yes, that's definitely something that's something that I've always respected. The fact that he did use that as nonviolence as a strategy. But the thing is, it always it always amazed me that things always tended to move when there was a threat of black folk being violent.
Hmm.
That's when it actually started to move. And that's the thing. It wasn't the sit-ins or the nonviolence. It was the point when they decided to move or to exert, then laws and things started to be passed.
Yeah.
It's almost like you had to have opposite ends of a spectrum in order to force
Yeah,
some movement toward the middle, so to speak.
yeah,
Um,
there you
you
go.
know, a new term that I don't know where I missed this. I've not known it before here recently. Talking about creative tension and how the overall strategy of the nonviolence. They had it was a to your point. It was a strategy. It was constructive means of disrupting the status quo to kind of force a crisis, so to speak. And so you get people to the power structure to see, hey, we've got to really deal with this. We look terrible across the country. The media is streaming these images out. We don't have a moment's peace in our own community. So we've got to do something. Now, the something at that time might have been a lot, but by today's standards, it's like maybe crumbs.
Yeah.
But just a pacifier, but what have you. But it was progress at the time. I think that that's kind of what's missing out of the Black Lives Matter movement in a way, is that there's no creative tension. There's no central leadership around kind of what is the goal of the movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the goal of the
I,
movement?
I,
And I think it may be kind of coalescing a little bit.
yeah.
Somebody like the George Floyd murder that happened, things happen, and that kind of pushes some things forward. But the actual movement itself, what is the purpose? Who are the leaders? You know, does anybody know the answers to those questions? What is the stated
Yeah.
purpose? Or what is the leadership structure? I even ask people that say I'm against BLM. Well, what are you against? Are you saying that you think Black Lives Matter? What are you against? What leader are you against? What philosophy are you against? Because there's not really a stated one.
Well, it can be it can. There's an argument to be made that some of their principles is based on Marxism. That's the that's um,
What, here's the thing about Marxism,
yeah,
man. And that was a concern because during that time, capitalism wasn't working for African Americans.
yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So, if they were, I'm not saying that the BLM is Marxist. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. But they're quick to they call Martin Luther King a communist.
correct. And
They call him a communist.
interesting enough, he studied both communism and Marxism, and he rejected both of them to a certain
Yeah,
degree.
exactly. Exactly, but here's the thing: what I've learned, and Pat, when I teach about Karl Marx and Engels, and I teach it in the class, one thing I always I'm astounded is everybody say you're a communist, but can't define what a communist and socialist is,
Yeah,
and they say, well, I'm against socialism, but you send your child to school on that free school bus,
yeah,
so I'm just confused.
yeah,
I'm just confused. I'm
yeah.
Yeah,
just
it's like
confused sometimes.
it's like
But
people
I'm
hear a
just
term and it's fashionable, or
yeah,
it's
yeah.
conventional wisdom to label somebody a socialist or a communist when they don't go along to get along. So you know how that goes.
but isn't
But
it
I,
interesting,
Yeah.
even in this Congress right now, that we got people who are calling people communists? I mean, it's just like I say, man. The more things change, the more they stay the same. You know?
What the thing is, and unfortunately, what people and what politicians, what they are counting on, and what they're taking advantage of. I
Ignorance.
think to quote Dr. King, there is nothing in this world more dangerous than
Yeah,
sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity.
yeah,
Those are the two most dangerous things. I think politicians definitely take advantage of those, and I
yeah,
think Dr. Cato, when you mentioned about the leaders of the movement, things of that nature, and I think somebody hit on this theme earlier, you gotta understand, like in those time period when Dr. King and John L. Lewis and that generation came out,
yeah,
pressure creates diamonds,
yeah,
and the type of pressure in society at that time produced some extraordinary people.
yeah,
It takes an extraordinary person to say that I know that in the prime of my life, while I have a chance to make all this money, but I'm going to make a decision that I could be killed for people who are not born yet, or people that I don't know. And when I studied like I said, King was not only educated at Morehouse, he got his PhD up there at Crozer Seminary at Boston University.
Boston U. Yeah,
Like you said, he could have had a very, he could have been a millionaire anyway,
hmm,
right? So when he made that decision, when I read about stories like him and Dr. King, that's kind of where Mr. Pat, I kind of get that selfless boldness from. Even though living here in Duplin County, that is some things that I really don't concern myself with when I call stuff out that's not fair. Not compare myself to them, but when I see their example, who am I to be concerned about
yeah,
certain things when I know I sit here, and all of us sit here, stand on the back and stand on the privilege of those that sacrifice. So who are we to kind of be squeamish about
Yeah.
things that are not right or unjust?
Yeah.
Just a thought. Just a
Yeah.
thought.
And a couple more interesting things about him. And he was human too, and he doubted himself. I mean, sometimes he was overcome with fear, but he still pressed forward. And I think that's one of the characteristics that I try to take away. That is, it's okay to doubt yourself. It's okay to be fearful at times, but you can't let it stop you. Especially when in your mind you think what you're doing is right.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
yeah,
was human.
Yeah,
He was human. He was flawed,
yeah,
but my oh my,
yeah.
what he was able to accomplish in such a short time.
yeah,
J-
39,
when
39 years old.
yeah,
Yeah, and you know what? Just think
and
about it.
his
They don't talk about, when he was in Boston. I think, was he engaged to a white lady? Oh, he had a white
Yes,
yeah,
girlfriend. They don't even talk
yes, he
about
was
her.
engaged. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was engaged. Yeah, he
yeah,
was
yeah.
engaged.
I think that lady was
I
white,
don't
a
I
white
don't
lady.
I don't know this story. I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
this
he
story.
was engaged. Yeah, he wanted to marry her, but they look the church. They said no, you're destined to be a Baptist minister down here, and they told him no. Yeah,
I'm,
that's a look. Yeah, that's
I'm
one of
not
those
sure if that's
books.
the
Yes,
lady. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, James. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm not sure if that's the one he was engaged to, but I know sometime there about, he was quite the ladies' man. I think somewhere along his path he had a white lady as
yeah.
a girlfriend,
He was
and his
he was a
father had
he was a
told him,
charismatic little
"Eh,
fellow, so
yes, sir,
it
yes,
was.
sir." I
Yeah,
think his father
you can't,
kind of spoke down to that. Said,
yeah,
"Son, that's not gonna work."
yeah.
So
Hey, look,
you can't
never
bring her
trust those
down.
Morehouse. You
You
can't
can't bring
trust
her
those
down.
Morehouse apples. Hey, they
What,
say you
what,
can't trust those Morehouse apples around your girls, man. Those Morehouse apples.
yeah,
You say
one
Morehouse
of
But now
apples.
one
let's.
yeah,
one of the quotes that from the we were talking about the letter from the Birmingham jail earlier that I think
Yes,
really resonates today is his calling out of the clergy and his calling out of
yes,
those quote unquote good people that just sit back
yeah,
and do nothing.
yeah,
And so, he said that we would have to repent in this generation, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the
yes,
appalling silence of the good people.
yes,
That resonates so true with me today, given some of the things that we've seen, stuff that I didn't even really know about that was even happening that's
yeah,
been brought to the forefront. When you talk about some of the stuff that's happening in other states around voting rights, some of the
hmm
stuff that has happened with the way that protesters have been treated, um, things of that nature. Human trafficking. You even get into
yeah,
some of those sorts of things.
yeah,
People just sit back because it doesn't affect them. But these are major moments of our time that, right is right, wrong is wrong.
yeah,
There's clearly a side of history that's not going to win. But,
yeah.
sit back and say nothing and do nothing. I think we're going to have
I,
some regret.
yeah, I think one of the, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Cato, because one of the things, and the definitely parallel today, is that Dr. King. I think his first assignment was at Dexter Avenue Church in Montgomery, Alabama. That's where it all started, and he took the place of this pastor. I want to say the pastor name was Vernon Johns. I think it was Vernon Johns, the name of that pastor. But Vernon Johns, he belonged to the church. Dexter Avenue was known for the church, while the doctors and the lawyers and the educated was the elite church at the time. And Dr. Johns was a pastor who was pushing them. Y'all need to be more active. He was more radical and pushed them, and they felt he was too extremist for their interest,
hmm
right? Because the people at that church, the elitists, their wealth and their privilege was tied to the status quo. So they kind of forced Johns out, but they brought Dr. King in, not knowing,
hmm
right? But the parallel is this here, and I want to speak to that, is that the African Americans who have made it, whatever made it is, who are have some level of privilege. um, you can't forget about the masses, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can't, say I've gotten here and forget. And that's what John was saying. He said, you're sitting here, one of those speeches, he says, but you have these poor black, these sharecroppers who are catching heck. And you as African Americans can't sit idly by because one day they're going to come for you. If Tulsa and Wilmington has taught us anything, is that when the power structure gets tired, they're coming for the wealthy ones first,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the parallel today is that, and sometimes I'm disheartened a little bit, is that I just wish sometimes that some of our, not all, I'm not trying to, not all of them, I'm just saying some. I wish that some of our churches that are more affluent will do a better job as far as outreach to the people that are not as fortunate to try to open doors for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because 9 times out of 10, they're one generation or so removed from that situation themselves.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something that I wish could happen.
Well, I think we're up to our hour. Did everybody want to make some closing comments? Call to
Oh,
action.
yeah. But we'll go from the youngest to the oldest.
Uh, oh, that's Dr. Cato right there.
I was wondering. I was wondering if I was the youngest. I think so.
Yeah.
I don't have anything necessarily profound to say other than,
Yeah.
I think there's definitely lots of lessons to be learned from Dr. King's leadership. In today's world, our young people, our middle-aged people, I mean, we've got to coalesce around some sort of principles and some sort of strategy to move forward an agenda for equality and equity for all of our folks. We're even more diverse now than we were back then, and like Dr. King said, we're all bound together. If one group of people is not treated well and is not doing well, then it's going to affect everybody eventually. And so we have so much more diversity now. We've got a lot of things that we've got to grapple with as a country, and we just need a real good strategy. And I think there's still lessons from Dr. King that we can take from that. We need that charismatic type leadership to bring folks together to make some things happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I was Dr. Cato, going back to what you said about that healthy tension. I think that's what I'm going to end with because right now, what I realize is that when you look across the um, in this country, where there's a term that is called division, um, and that term division has been used in a way to prevent people from talking about issues. Because to talk about it means that, oh, you're divided. No, no, that's not what division is. You know, you can. I think division has to do with what's in your heart because you can listen to any speech, you can listen to any concept, and it doesn't mean that you and your brothers are divided unless division is in your heart. So what I will say is, don't be afraid to talk about tough issues. If people are uncomfortable, then that's something that they have to square away for themselves. Um, we we don't get better in this country, in this nation, by not talking about things that make us uncomfortable. So I would say if my call to action is if you're in a conversation, call it out. Now you can be eloquent like Dr. King was. Oftentimes I find that that's the best way. If your goal is for mutual understanding on both sides, then I think it'll come across in a good faith way. But if your goal is just to be right and embarrass somebody, then I think
Yeah.
that's shy away from it. But I think we do need to talk about tough issues and educate ourselves to be able to, yeah, educate ourselves.
Yeah. Good one, man. Look, wow, there's so much with Dr. King, man. I think his last book is really the title really breaks it down. It's where do we go from here?
Yeah,
Um, chaos or community? And basically, where are we going? Are we going towards? Are we going to be chaotic, or are we going to be a community? And now, and unfortunately, there are forces in play that is to their benefit that everything stays in chaos. That we're not a community. And when I say community, I'm talking about everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and so what you say, look for things, look for things that we have in common. Look for things that we can share our common humanity. Um, but the reason why I'm pessimistic, I'll be honest, not optimistic. I'm pessimistic when I think about King is that when we are dealing with people who don't see us as human, and don't see us as full people, or in their mind subconsciously or what, see us as less than, then when you talk to them asking them to see your humanity, you're always going there at a disadvantage. So to King's advantage, what I'll say is just, hey, just be the best version of yourself you can be, and just be the change you seek to see in the world. Okay. Oh, I think you're on mute, Pat. I think you muted.
My bad. Sorry. I don't
No
really
problem.
have
No
too
problem.
much
No problem.
super profound to say. Like Mr. Smith alluded to, I think we have to have the courage to keep the channels of dialogue open, and we have to challenge one another, um, no matter what side of the political spectrum we may find ourselves on. And once again, James, like Dr. King said, upon hearing of the death of Malcolm X, we have to learn how to disagree without becoming violently disagreeable, if you will.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's okay to disagree. We're not gonna we're not gonna agree on everything. I'm an
Right.
NC State fan, but so we're not gonna agree
What?
on everything.
Oh,
So,
oh,
so
Hold
it's
on,
just
don't push it.
All right.
hey man, I just I just try to like Dr. King say, just try to do God's will, man, and try to live every day to honor his legacy. So
Yeah.
that's it for me. Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you all for agreeing to be a part of this panel, this conversation. Thanks to everybody who's out there is watching, and I hope everybody enjoyed the rest of their evening.
All
Thank you,
right.
gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thanks
Good
for
evening,
having
Thank
us.
you. Thank
everyone.
you.
All right.
Have a good evening, guys.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
All right. Send me that link.